I'd like for Trey to, if the Boy Scouts can still be a good, you know, they're not going to be pushing this agenda that they've had lately, then I'd still like to get him into them one day. See,
just go along with him. David didn't do it. Winnie would, everything that Alice had to do, Winnie was like this. Then she got the letter, she got everything he got too.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, she really enjoyed it. They went polar bear hunting, camping, somewhere up in the hills. Up there, sleeping bags and their eggs to cover. So they got you smelling stuff. Somebody, they had heat. So they did get a polar bear patch. Don't be greedy, I'm waiting.
Sorry, Frank.
He's perfectly
if
happy.
If you could see
him
from this angle, he's so cute, it's distracting.
I told the doctor, if I said baby, I said, you know, I'm a granny.
That means I get to hold her.
I do hold baby.
Well, I guess before we get started this morning, Frank, would you like to open us in prayer?
Our most gracious and kind loving Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this very beautiful Lord's Day that has blessed us with. We thank Thee for having Brother Layne and his family here this morning, Heavenly Father. And Father, we thank Thee for the nice rest that has blessed us with. Heavenly Father, we ask that be with us through this hour of study. Be with us always. In Thy Son Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Oh, Brother Layne?
Yes.
Big Dad's not doing any better.
Brick staff. Is it
I knew
getting close?
Feeding tube working on that.
Oh, did they start them on the feeding tube this past 2 weeks?
You gonna fuss at
When he was in the nursery,
Okay, I'll give you
I didn't get nothing either for 3 weeks. They put some insurance on there. See, that's what we didn't do it. Because they didn't, it's too late.
I'm hoping that if it is his time, I hope that he doesn't have to suffer, you know. So.
Brother Rick told me he's reaching for his hand. I said, honey, he wants you to tell him it's all right. And he said, see, when Mama was dying, she was fighting so hard. Mom, when everybody tell you they love you and you want the best for them, just close your eyes. Don't fight.
Yeah.
And she said, are you going to be all right? I said, Mama, I'll be fine. So I said, die. And she wanted me back in and she said, Daddy, happy birthday, because I'm going. And I said, got your suitcase packed, Mom? She said, I got it. About 10 minutes later, put on some
At least she accepted it, you know. And she
didn't fight on it.
I remember when I was just a kid, I was in the room. I was probably the last person that got to ever see my great grandma alive, because I went, walked in the room and was there with her, and then I think I was there for her final breaths. But then I walked out of the room and I didn't really understand it at the time. But I walked out and my father walked in, and then not even a couple seconds later, he came in and everybody ran into the room to. So, but
Never to see none of my grandparents.
well,
I survived.
what we were talking about just now kind of plays into where we were last time in our study. You guys remember we're in 1 Samuel. We were looking at the beginning of chapter 28 last week. We kind of turned last week's study into a different type of study, but that's all right. It's a pertinent topic. So, you guys remember what we were talking about here in the first part of 28?
When he's seeking a soldier to tell what to do.
Mm-hmm. Who was seeking spiritual advice? Yeah, Saul. Why is he seeking?
He's troubled.
Yeah. And who should he go to? Who would a Jew go to for spiritual advice.
Somebody that's strong in the faith and go to my God, but I could find nobody that I think is strong in the faith. I do it on my own.
And to the Jews, who has always been for years the go-to guy for religious things? Not the Pope, the priest. Not the Pope.
I'm sorry.
The high priest, right?
Yes.
Now, who was the high priest at this time? What's the name of the book we're reading? Samuel. But where's Samuel at?
He was dead.
He's dead and buried, right? And so, yes, dead and buried in his hometown of Ramah. So that's pretty bad news for King Saul. Why?
Because there's so much turmoil. And David is trying his best to get to what he said.
Well, I mean, Saul, he's wanting spiritual advice, and the guy that he's supposed, who he's always gotten it from, the last time they ever talked, Samuel told him what?
He didn't want to see him anymore.
He's not going to see him anymore. I mean, don't forget, Samuel said, this is a promise. You and me, we're done, But he went and he prayed for him, and he wept on Saul's behalf and prayed to God for him and hoped for the best. Kept hoping that Saul would turn around. So it's not like he resented him or anything, or held a grudge or anything, an unscriptural type grudge. But that's the last time Saul ever spoke to Samuel was that conversation. And now Samuel's dead, and Saul is wanting spiritual advice. But what did Saul do to all the witches and wizards and all these magicians in the land? He kicked them all out of the land, right? That was a good move because it was in accordance with the laws of the Jews. God had said back in Exodus and Deuteronomy and Leviticus, He taught when when the law was given, do not have these witches and wizards and people who prophesy falsely. Prophesy falsely and in your midst. Get them out. That was the law. And so Saul had kicked. That's one of the good things. Because remember, Saul has done a lot of good things as king. He's been messing up a lot lately, but one of the good things that he did do is kick these witches and wizards out. But now we see here in the first part of 1 Samuel chapter 28, what is he going to do? His options are limited, right? And so he goes and he resorts to doing what? Let's read. Let's see. Go to.
Verse 7.
Yeah, that's where we stopped last time. So let's go from verse 5, and we'll read through. There it is. We'll read through 14. So let's go through 5 through 14. And when Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart greatly trembled. And when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets.
Then said Saul unto his servant, Seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said to him, Behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit at Endor.
And Saul disguised himself and put on the other raiment, and he went into men with him. And they came to the woman by night, and he said, I pray thee, divine unto me by the familiar spirit, and bring me him up, whom I shall name unto thee. And the woman said unto him, Behold, thou knowest what Saul hath done, how he hath cut off those that have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land, wherefore thou layest there for my life to cause me to die.
Saul swore to her by the Lord, saying, As the Lord liveth, there shall no punishment happen to thee for this thing. Then said the woman, Whom shall I bring up unto thee? And he said, Bring me up Samuel.
Now, let's see. Let's pause there real quick. Well, we'll read the next two, and then we'll discuss these. Hold on, verse 12. And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice, and the woman spake to Saul, saying, Why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul. And the king said unto her, Be not afraid, for what sawest thou? And the woman said unto Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth. And he said unto her, What form is he of? And he said, An old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed himself. Okay, so here in this section, we talked about those familiar spirits, and we talked about the wizards, and we talked about all of these things, but we also talked about, do these people actually have powers? Do they really have the power to do any of this stuff that they claim to be able to do? Or does this fall in the realm of magic? And what is magic?
You see something that's so unbelievable that you think it's really like David Copperfield.
Yeah.
You know it's not true, but he can do it so good that you, yeah, it's true.
It's an illusion, right? It's a trick. It's a trick that makes you think one thing, but it's really another, right?
Don't you think they read in the mind when they believe in something like that?
Huh?
Don't they want to believe in something, so they think it's right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. There's a lot of magic shows where the whole show, like the whole entertainment, the whole thing, all hinges on getting the people in the audience to want to believe what they're seeing. If somebody's sitting in the audience, like if I just go there right now and I wanted to be entertained, and I just turn my brain off and say, I want to see I want to see this cool magic trick. I want to see this. And I go and I'm looking to be entertained, then I'm not going to be looking to try to figure out, I'm not going to be looking to try to pick apart the trick and try to figure out how it's done, right? If I'm just going to be entertained, I'm just going to go and see it and see the person put on a show. But if I go there and I sit down and I'm just with my little notepad and paper, and I just sit there and I'm like, while everybody else is looking at the fire that this guy is shooting out of this little magic wand, but and I'm looking at his other hand. What is his other hand doing? What are the people on the other side of the stage doing? Here's all the action. Let me look over here. Then you see how the trick over here is being done by all the people over here, or what the person's doing with the other hand. Like those card tricks, you got to look at, a lot of the times, they'll have like three decks of cards, and then they'll mix them up and do all this stuff. But while they're doing one deck, you never notice somebody else's hand put another deck down, And so that's the whole thing. We could talk about magic and stuff all day, but the whole reason that we bring that up is because magic in all of this stuff is these witches and these wizards and these oracles and voodoo people today, and these crystal brawl.
England's got witches today.
Yeah, and in America too. I went to, when I was at college before I moved out here, I was in a geology class with a lady who actually believed that different rocks had different magical properties, and that you could contain different types of spirits in different types of rocks. And she was in my geology class, which, what is a geology class? To study rocks, right, in the earth. And so she was like, I'm taking this so I can get my degree, and I'm taking this particular science class because I want to learn more about how to capture these spirits and use them for my own I was like, what?
Oh, she didn't have a big bucket full.
And I was, she was a very nice lady, but she really did believe that she was a witch, and so.
She probably had training at home.
Huh?
She probably got some good training at home.
Yeah, and she, like I said, she was a nice lady, and she was, she was very appreciative of me and a couple other members of the congregation back home who went to that college. She was very appreciative of us being very respectful to her and polite and not trying to ram Christianity down her throat. Yeah, she actually called herself a witch, and so, I tried to get her to understand certain things, but, there's only so much you can do with only meeting somebody a few times a week, for class, because you're not there just to have a conversation, you're there for a class. But anyway, but we know that this woman has no power, right? She claims to be able to call people back from the dead, and so how well known is this woman? She's got to be at least, Saul, think about this. King Saul has banished all these witches and wizards from the land, right? But then he says, we see here, he says, I want some of these spiritual answers to my spiritual questions. I need help. Where does anybody, Samuel's gone. He acknowledges that. And he's like, is there anyone else? He's desperate, right? If he's banished these people because he knows that God hates this, that he doesn't want witches and wizards in this country, and he knows that they don't work, he's got to be, how desperate does he have to be? How many, you hear that term, grasping at straws? That's exactly what he's doing here, isn't it? Where he's like, he knows he's having to resort to something that he knows is not real. But what does he do here? He disguises himself, right? You guys ever seen that movie Aladdin? The Disney movie Aladdin? And where the princess, she dresses up as a poor person, and she goes at the beginning of the movie, and she goes out and nobody recognized her. You remember that? That's what Saul's doing here. He's royalty, right? And he dresses up and pretends to be someone else, and he goes and he meets her, right? Why would he have to dress up?
She probably figured out who he was.
And what would happen if she figured out who he was?
Walk off and leave.
Yeah, walk off and leave him, or refuse to serve him, or she might even take off running, because the last time, you imagine being in her shoes. She's over here saying she's a witch and she can perform all these magical services for people and call up the dead and talk to them and all that. She gets kicked out of the country by who? Can you imagine? Yeah, by Saul. And can you imagine if Saul, being her, if Saul came into her house, like, last time she ever heard anything from him was getting kicked out of the country. Imagine you getting kicked out of this country by the president, right? How would you feel? That wouldn't be very nice, would it? And then imagine you're just sitting at home, and then the president walks in to your new house. What would you have a react? That's where she's at, So instead of just showing up as the king, with all of his people, which he could have done, he pretends to be someone else and he goes there. Now, she said, is she jumping at the chance to say, yeah, great, just give me $5 or give me, some money, and then I'll perform this service for you? Is she like jumping at the chance to serve him, to perform her her service?
No, she asked him how come he just got
You got it. Is she confident or is she nervous? And tell me why.
Oh, in verse 12, it said, why hast thou received me?
What were you saying, Frank?
Saul's already banished her from the country.
Mm-hmm.
Then he shows up. Next thing you know, he's gonna kill her. You know, why she would be nervous?
Yeah, and she doesn't know it's him yet, right? But why, even before she figures out that it's Saul, she's got some random person coming into her building that she doesn't know. She doesn't know this guy. And she's like, why are you laying a trap for me? Don't you know that Saul has banished me? Right? She's like, she's not, she's like, whoa. You know, kind of like, she's being very cautious about this. You know, it's like if a prostitute got caught and got put in jail, and then later on she got out, do you think that she should keep on doing what she was doing? Probably not. But is there ever a case where a drug dealer or a prostitute or a gun smuggler, some type of sin, somebody doing something, is there ever a case where somebody does that and then they're back out, they're free, they're back in the world, and they continue to do what they were doing, but they do it secretly? Yeah, all the time, right? Now, do you think that if a gun smuggler or a drug dealer or a prostitute, you know, sitting at their house and some new person comes in and say, hey man, give me some of the good stuff. Yeah, give me some of the good stuff. Some of the good stuff. You imagine, would that person, would that drug dealer or that gun smuggler or that prostitute be like, all right, yeah, let's do this, yeah? Probably not. They're probably going to try to. Yeah, if they had any sense at all, they wouldn't. So we see that this woman's no idiot, right? She's not an idiot. She's misguided and she's a liar, but she's not an idiot. She's smart about her business. So, and she's cautious. She doesn't want to be killed, like Frank said, or to be caught and brought before Saul for doing this. So she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she ends up doing it, but why? What changed her mind? In what verse?
13. And the king said unto her, be not afraid for what thou sawest. And the woman said unto Saul, I saw God was sending out of her.
And
That's when you're talking about?
yeah, and so we see that he said what? Go ahead.
Verse 10, it talks about Saul saying there be no punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So this one she's ready to go ahead and
Mm-hmm. Now, what did he say before there be no punishment?
swear to her.
Swear to who? He swore to her. He took an oath, but how heavy of an oath was this? He swear.
But there'll be no punishment, I don't know.
He swear by the Lord, right? I mean, does it get any higher than that? Does it? I mean, it does not get any higher than that. Can you now imagine being in that woman's shoes? She says, "Okay, well, this Jew just came to me. She knows he's a Jew, but this Jew came to me, and he says he wants my services, and I said no, because I don't know you. I'm no witch. Don't worry. I'm not gonna. You know, this is a trap. You're trying to trick me. Oh, wait. You know, I'm putting myself in her shoes. Oh, wait. He just swore by his God. He just swore on his own. You know, what does that mean if somebody swears in the Lord's name?
Like we swear when you go to jury duty.
Yeah.
Virginia, I swear.
I mean, you are making a public declaration that what you are saying is truth. Punishable by the Almighty God, right? If you're lying. So she's taking him seriously, right? She's like, okay, well, he swore by his Lord, so he must be serious. Surely he's not going to lie to catch me, by swearing on the Lord's name. So she goes ahead and she does the service, and she starts doing the service, and then let's see. It said, let me read this commentary from Brother Bob Knox. It says, once the witch's fears were satisfied, she asked who her visitor wanted to bring forth, right? Okay, so if she was a real witch, and she was really able to discern the thoughts and intents and read people's minds and bring back, if she really had all this power, would she have had to have asked? She would have been able to conjure up the dead, and whoever it was in the realm of the dead that wanted to speak to Saul, she would have been able to bring that person. But you see the trick. This is all part of the trick. This is what you guys see in movies and TV shows today, where they do the little Ouija board, or they do the little the crystal ball stuff, and they say, or they do the little seance spells or whatever. Yeah, the tarot cards and all that. They ask you all these questions at the beginning, so then while they're doing all this, they can twist these little facts, the little tarot cards. Oh wow, you must have known this woman that you're wanting to, you're trying to communicate with your dead mom or something, and then the tarot card of the weeping mother or whatever pops over, and then she said, your mother is trying to say that she's sad, looking at the mistakes that you're making in life. Well, what if I went in there and I didn't tell the person who I wanted to speak to? I just wanted them to, what if I walked in there and said, hey, I want somebody who I'm missing to tell me about my life. I want somebody who was once here, who meant something special to me, to tell me something about my life. And I want proof. I'm not going to tell you who the name is of the person. I'm not going to tell you how I know them or they know me. I'm not going to tell you any details about my life. But I want you, I'll pay you money if you can call this person from the dead, and then they can communicate with me and you can prove it. If they could do that, that would be great. But what's the problem? Now, they don't have any information, right? It's really hard for a magician or one of these false prophets to do anything without any kind of information to go on, right? So you see, right from the outset, she says, okay, sure, I'll do the ceremony for you. And she says, who do you want to talk to? And he says, Samuel, right? Okay. Now, what happened here? She's done this ritual 1,000 times, right? And she's sitting there confident as can be. She's completely confident. She hasn't said anything to Saul about, hey, this is about to get scary. There's going to be some freaky deaky stuff happening because we're calling people back from the dead. Don't get scared, right? She has not said any of this to Saul, has she? Or any of the people there. So she's just going to do what she's always done, and she's just going to call, she's going to say, oh, I got him right here. He's in my belly. He wants to speak. I'm going to let him speak for me. That's what she's about to do. And like she's always done. And then she's going to collect her paycheck and be on her merry way. But what happens here?
She discovers it's Saul.
Yeah, but how does she discover it's Saul? Did he tell her? Somebody told her. Who was it? And the answer is exactly what it says here in the text. This woman she did not have the power. She has no power to bring anybody back from the dead, right? She has no power to do that. But Samuel speaks from the dead to her. Who does? She does not have the power, but who to do that? But who does have the power to do that? God. So we see God is stepping in here, and Samuel speaks to her. And how do we know? How do we know that Samuel is actually speaking to her from the dead? You have to speak up a little bit.
And he said unto her, what form she said, an old man cometh up, and he covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived it was Samuel, and he stooped his face to the ground about to be. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, look at verse 12, and it says, and when the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. Okay, does that sound, I mean, she could have done that faking, right? But it says she cried out with a loud voice, and the woman spake to Saul, saying, why hast thou deceived me? For what? Okay, 1 second. She's refusing to serve this random stranger because she doesn't know if he's going to report her to Saul, right? So she knows this guy is not Saul, right? She knows for a fact this guy is not Saul. So that's why she does the service for this stranger who swore on the Lord's name that she would not get in trouble. He wouldn't report her to Saul. He's lying because he is Saul. But she knew in her heart, in her mind, she knew, based on the information she had, that that was not Saul. A couple seconds later, what happened? What does she know? For a fact now. That he is Saul. Did he just randomly change his own mind and tell her, oh yeah, by the way, I'm Saul? No, she was mad. She was mad and she was scared and she was upset, right? And she's like, why did you lie to me? Why'd you deceive me? Why'd you lie to me? You are Saul. Okay, how else would she have known that if Samuel had not come back from, had not spoken to her, right? So we see, and now look at verse 13. And the king said unto her, be not afraid, for what sawest thou? And so Saul's like, hey, calm down, quit freaking out, tell me what you saw, right? And she says what? And the woman said unto Saul, I saw what? Ascending or descending?
Ascending.
What does that mean?
Out of the earth.
Going up.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
And so where was Samuel? Dead and buried, right? And so why would she, it says little g gods right here, right? Now, why would she say that, why would she describe him as a god ascending, coming up out of the ground? Because, honestly, that's the gravity of the situation we're dealing with. This woman has been a liar. She's never conjured up a dead spirit or a dead person. She's never done that before in her life. But now, an actual thing, she's actually receiving a real vision from God, and it's scaring her, right? She's seeing in this vision, she's seeing that, and we know it's a vision. Why? Because she can see it, and who else can? Who else can see it? Nobody else. So we know it's a vision. We know it's not actually Samuel sprouting up out of the ground right there, right? But in her vision, he's coming up out of the ground, and look what he says here in verse 14. And he said unto her, Saul is asking her, what form is this God coming up out of the ground up? What does he look like? And what does she tell him? An old man. Okay. So how old was Samuel when he died? Was he still young and spry? Was he like the same age Saul was? You guys remember Samuel, why did he die? He died of old age, right? Right? And so we see she's giving, how would she know that?
I don't believe she would know.
Probably not. And so we see she's giving an accurate description of an old man, and he is covered with a mantle. Okay? Do you guys remember how the priests would wear you remember the ephod? The ephod? It was that tunic or the robe, the garments that the priest wore, right? So he's wearing a mantle. He's old. He's coming up out of the ground, and Saul. And, all right, so all of these things points to the fact that who is this coming up out of the ground in her vision? It has to be one person, Samuel. He's wearing the priestly robes. He's an old man, and he's dead, coming back from the dead. There's only one person that this fits perfectly, at least, because of the fourth thing. He knows Saul, and he tells the woman, this man is not who he says he is. This is Saul. And look at verse 14, the second half of it. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel. And what does he do? And now does he fall to the ground and start bowing and saying, "Oh Samuel, oh Samuel"? No, we've seen before that who was the one who gave Saul his position as king? God gave it to him, but who anointed him? Who was the one who told Saul, "You're going to be king"? Who's the one who anointed him with the oils? Samuel. Who's the one that taught Saul about the ways of the Lord and what the Lord expected? Samuel. Who's the one who was still the high priest while Saul was the king? Samuel. And who's the one who Saul, as a Jew, still relied upon to do all these religious things, and he still looked up to while he was alive? Samuel. So we see when he's bowing here, he's not bowing to worship him. He's bowing because he recognizes, hey, I can't see, even if I cannot see Samuel here, this woman is telling me that he's here. And it's terrifying her. And it's like if I were to be able to see a ghost in here, and y'all couldn't see him, but I started describing, like a former member here is what I'll say, a ghost of a former member, and I started describing to you this ghost, and you guys would be like, oh, okay, sure. But then I start telling you more things, that ghost would be telling me stuff, and then I'll tell you more, and you'd be like, oh, whoa, this is freaky. How does he know that? Layne's only been here for like a year. He's never, how does he know that? What happened here like 20 years ago? Then you guys would be starting to take it seriously, right? So that's what Saul is doing here. And so he's bowing himself. Now look at let's read 15 through 20. And Samuel said to Saul, "Why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up?" And Saul answered, "I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God has departed from me, and answers me no more, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called thee, that thou mayest make known unto me what I should do."
Then said Samuel, "Therefore then dost thou ask of me, seeing the Lord is departed from thee, and is become thine enemy.
And the Lord hath done to him as he spoke by him, for the Lord hath rent the kingdom out of thy hand, and given it to thy neighbor, even to David.
Because thou obeyest not the voice of the Lord, nor executed his fierce wrath upon Amalek. Therefore hath the Lord done this thing unto this day.
Moreover, the Lord will also deliver Israel with thee into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow shalt thou and thy sons be with me. The Lord also shall deliver the host of Israel into the hands of the Philistines. So we'll stop there. Do you guys think that's some pretty good news that Saul wants to hear? Where's Samuel at when he says, tomorrow you're going to be with me? Where's Samuel? Dead. You think that's the kind of news Saul went there wanting to hear? I don't think so either. Saul's desperation and degradation is shown here in these verses, right? He had been unable to get a communication, so he was unable to get guidance from God in what areas? Like, Saul had been trying to pray to God on his own, right? But was it working?
God had departed from him, it says.
Yeah. And so he's praying to him while he's awake, right? And he's not getting anything back. He's going to sleep at night, and he's, Yeah, and when he does sleep, he's expecting to hopefully have some type of dream that God gives him, like some dream that tells him some type of knowledge or revelation or guidance on what he should do, because that's what he's spending his days doing, is praying to God for guidance. You know, he's hoping that even if God doesn't answer while he's awake, he'll give him some information while he's dreaming. Not doing that. There's no prophets that are speaking what the Lord is saying. Nobody's coming up and saying, hey, God wants you to do this, God doesn't want you to do that. Nobody's saying anything. And so there's nothing that he's getting no feedback from God. And that's what Saul is telling Samuel, the spirit of Samuel here. And he's like, I've tried everything else. Because Samuel, why is Saul telling Samuel all this stuff? Because Samuel asks him, he's like, you guys like that on that Aladdin movie. You guys remember where the big thing comes out of the sand there, and the Cave of Wonders comes out of the sand, and the cave says, "Who disturbs my slumber?" or whatever. You remember that? Or whatever it is, or the giant in Jack and the Beanstalk. He gets woken up and he's like, "Who disturbs my slumber?" All that stuff. That's what Samuel's like. He's like, "What are you doing, man? I'm dead. Why am I here? Why are you bringing me back?" And Saul's like, "I've tried everything else. You think I like doing this?" I'm paraphrasing, of course, but what was it doing? Oh, here it is. So he's tried everything, and now he's had to resort to these evil soothsayers to get any kind of reaction here. Look at 1 Samuel 15:23, where it says, "For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he hath also rejected thee from being king." You guys remember that? It says rebellion, talking about against God. Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft.
What verse is that?
That's 1 Samuel 15:23. So you guys remember where this has already been covered before. Witchcraft and wizardry.
Oh.
Because, and we already covered that it's false prophecy.
It's worthless.
It's worthless, and it's also sin, right? And the rebellion against God is being equated here to being as evil as this sin. And so Samuel, can you imagine Samuel, who's the one who told that to Saul in the first place? Can you imagine his reaction when he's being called back from the dead by the guy? He said, "This is a sin to do witchcraft," and now he's trying to practice this witchcraft, and God intervenes and says, "Okay, you guys don't have the power, I do, but I'm going to call Samuel back, and I'm going to let this conversation happen just so these things can be cleared up." But what do we see here? It says, look at verse 16. Samuel basically told Saul that he would not receive any guidance from God, because God was now what?
Departed from him.
Yeah, and now in verse 16 here. Then says Samuel, wherefore then dost thou ask of me, seeing the Lord is departed from thee, and is become thine what? Enemy. He's like, Samuel says, no, the Lord's not going to help you. The Lord is against you, right? You gotta, I just love the way Samuel makes things so easy to understand. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't overcomplicate things. He doesn't try to get around it. He just straight up tells them, no, you're trying, the reason why God's not answering you is why? It's because he's your enemy. He's not going to help you because you're not pleasing in his sight. He'll help you. That has God ever changed? He's the same, right? So are his rules, right? So he's saying, if you want to be right in the sight of God, God's not going to change what he says, what he said he was going to do, and he's not going to change to be on your side now. Yeah, he said, if you want, he's saying God's not going to help you because he's your enemy. How do you make God your enemy? By disobeying, being a sinner, right? How do you make God your friend? By obedience, and now how do we do that in the New Testament? Not just prayer, but if we want God to be our enemy today, in 2015, disobey God, or don't obey to begin with, right? If we want to make God our friend, we'll do what?
Become a faithful Christian.
And that's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. If we want God to be our friend and to stay our friend, like he promised he would, we've got to play by his rules, right? And are God's rules fair or unfair? They're fair. I mean, he's doing all the hard part. He's the one forgiving sins and giving us, he's the one giving us eternal life. All we got to do is what? Yeah, he did. I mean, he came to this earth, lived a perfect life. You think that was easy? I don't think we preach about that enough. Like, Jesus' life was not easy. Exactly. But he endured temptation. He got through it and lived a perfect life so that he could suffer even more and be killed for us. He's done all the hard part. We just got to do what? Obey him. All we got to do is get rid of our sins. How do we get rid of them? By being baptized. Contacting the blood of Christ. And how do we do that? It's being fully immersed for the remission of our sins, right? It's the only way. It's the only way. There's a lot of people that just say, "Oh, well, all you got to do is pray." Well, let me just ask you this: How was this? All you got to do is pray. How was that working out for Saul right here? You think he's getting the results he wanted? Quite the opposite, right?
He went to extreme measures to get on God's side. This is a good word.
Like these denominations do today. You see, how many different types of Baptists are there? We could sit here and count, and that's just the denominations of one denomination of the Baptists. Isn't that crazy? The reason why I'm bringing that up is because the Southern Baptists have decided that they are now going to, seriously, their International Missions Council, they don't have, it's their version of the Pope. They have a council that decides what their denomination believes. And you know what they decided the last couple weeks? They said, well, we're really tired. That's what they said. We're really tired of losing people, having people not convert to Southern Baptists. So, and we're losing a lot of these converts to the Pentecostals, and we tried to figure out why, and we figured out that they love this, what they called prayer language. Prayer language, and I'm doing that quote on purpose, and I'm doing it for the camera too. Prayer language is the 2015 term for what? Speaking in tongues. Why are we even talking about this? It's because what Frank said is, and here in 1 Samuel 28 is perfect. Saul has gone to extreme measures that he knows. I mean, he's gone to these such extreme lengths to try to get some type of emotional or mental or psychological reaction, some type of something from God. He's trying to get some kind of communication so God, and it means so much to him that he gets some type of communication from God. He's willing to do anything anything it takes. Even talk to this person he knows is a sinner and do something he knows is a sin in order to do it. He'll go to whatever lengths possible to try to get God to talk to him. Well, this whole just ask Jesus into your heart thing, how is that working out for Saul here? How is just praying to God and believing in God, how is that helping him at all? It's not. It's actually making things worse. It's actually making things, it's driving him to the point of, I've got to have some type of reaction. And so what is the reason I brought up this whole prayer language thing is they have decided that the Southern Baptists now have decided that magically we're gonna start including speaking in tongues in all of our services. Need I remind you, ever since the Baptists first created their denomination, they have been against speaking in tongues. But now, all of a sudden, they realize, well, we're losing a lot of people. A lot of people they don't want to become a Southern Baptist because we don't have that. Or the ones that we do have, they're quitting and becoming Pentecostals because they do have the speaking in tongues. But do they really have speaking in tongues? The power to speak in tongues? No. Because 1 Corinthians 13, 9, and 10 tell us days and miracles are done. Like, if they are able to speak in tongues today, then, and that's what they do their service in, then what in the new, do you guys remember what was required for in the New Testament for when they spoke in tongues? They had to have an interpreter so that everybody in the service could understand what was being taught, or else what good is it, right? Yeah. And so if they can't translate what they're saying into a cohesive message for every single person today, if they just get up and they just start making a whole bunch of hullabaloo, see my tie, hear my tie. You guys know what I just said? See my tie, hear my tie. See? If they start just getting up and start saying a whole bunch of random stuff, and they can't actually, every single person in there, write down the same exact words, then you know for a fact they're not speaking in tongues, or else they would have gotten the same message. The reason why I'm spending all this time on this is because we see here that that Samuel, he's telling Saul, hey, you can pray all you want, you can do all this stuff, you can wait as long as you want for these visions to come, you can do all of this stuff, but unless this is what he's getting at here. He's like, things aren't going to change unless you change. God is not going to help you because he's your enemy right now. Right? Why would God be Saul's enemy? He's the king of the Jews. It's because you guys remember what he's done in the past, right?
I don't know if this for the last night when my sister just passed away.
Mhm.
She went to a church of God,
Mhm.
and the preacher knew she was kind of retarded.
Yeah.
He took her to the funeral park.
Mhm.
Was gonna pray my daddy out of the grave.
Did your dad come out of the grave?
And you know what he told her?
What?
She just didn't have enough of her.
Oh yeah, and yeah, he put it on her. Yeah, that's what it was.
And I went to church one night with her. So he said, "Oh, she got saved today." I just called to tell you my sister needed a ride home. And I said, "My daddy's still at prison. How come he's not home? How come the others is not at home? They're loved ones. They don't have enough of faith neither. Can you buy at the dollar store for 10 cents buy a piece of candy?"
Mhm.
I said, "You have messed my sister's mind completely." And she really thought it was her fault. And she quit going to church altogether, but she got to go with Brother Perry's wife's parents. But she's never got over that. She couldn't raise that kid.
Yeah. I just don't understand how people can believe what can literally get up, how these Pentecostal or charismatic or whatever denomination they get up and they say, "Oh, I can work miracles. Oh yes, we can do miracles today." They say these things, but then you say, "Okay, prove it." If you can do a miracle, then that means that you can prove what you're saying. And then that means that I'm wrong and you're right. Please show me this miracle. Please, please. Let's go to the grave. Let's go to the graveyard and I'll pray that your work, I will pray to God that you are able to succeed in whatever you're doing. I will pray that you will be able to raise this person from the dead. I will pray and pray and pray. And then, okay, let's just say that Pentecostal or that charismatic person, they say, "Okay, yeah, let's go to the grave." Then they try to say, when the person's not going to come up out of the grave, right? Then they try to say to us, "Oh, well, you just don't have enough faith." Well, what should our immediate reaction be? Let's look in the New Testament, Mr. Preacher, and say, how many times when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, how many of the other people there, how many of them believed that's what he was going to do? A few of them. A few of the other ones didn't. Did it have anything to do with another person's belief, whether that person with miracles could do that miracle or not? Did it have anything to do with belief? No. It was, "Hey, I can heal you. You've been blind since birth? Okay, you're healed." Everybody knows that's a blind guy. He's always been blind for all these years. Everybody knows that's a lame guy. He's never been able to walk ever. Everybody knows that, this person here, that person there, that everybody knows that these people are these people, and they've always been this way. And what happens? Jesus heals them, whether the other people believe it or not, right? It doesn't hinge on their belief or not. Case in point, that's the New Testament example that we can go to prove today that what these people are peddling are lies. But case in point, now, that's New Testament coming forward. Now look at that New Testament example and look back at where we're at. Did that woman actually believe? Did this woman with the familiar spirit, this witch, did she actually believe that she was going to be raising somebody from the dead?
In her mind, she did.
No, absolutely not. She did not believe that she was going to ever do that, because has she done this before? She's done this process so many times, and she's never been successful. Why? Because she doesn't have that power. Nobody does except for God. She's never been successful, and how do we know that she did not expect? She did not think when this guy walked in that she was actually going to raise somebody from the dead? How do we know she did not know that was going to happen? Because she was terrified, right? She was terrified. She was screaming. And Saul had to literally say, hey, calm down. Calm yourself down and tell me what you see. This is what we're getting at. When people say they can do something and they tell people, hey, I can perform this service for you. I can do this. And they know that they are a liar, that they're lying, that's a sin. That's a sin. And that's why that's the whole point behind God banishing these witches and these wizards. It's not because they can actually do magic and it's blasphemous to God. No. It's because they're tricking people and they're lying. Like a magician, the honest magicians today, they don't tell people, hey, I can do miraculous things that no one else can do. They tell people, hey, I can do a really cool trick, and I might tell you how I do it, and I might not. A good magician's not going to claim to have some miraculous divine power today. They could, and trick some people. But this woman right here was terrified that she was actually seeing. Can you imagine being a liar all your life and telling people that you've been able to do this, and then all of a sudden you see in your vision, you see somebody crawling out of the grave in your mind? Like to her, all of this is real in her mind, and we know that it's an actual vision because she wouldn't have been able to describe all of these. She would not have been able to describe all these intimate details without it being real. Go ahead.
I told him my sister was not the only one's got one eye in the grave. How come they're picking on her?
We come
Because
drag
she's
in.
Because her mind is all right, and they just bulldoze. I think they'll change her mind.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what they do. They pick on the people who they believe that they can trick, and then they say, oh well, you don't have enough faith, so that's why the person is not coming out of the grave, is because you don't have enough faith. You don't, or the person who is in a wheelchair, and they come to these little Pentecostal tent meetings, and they say, oh, we can faith heal, and they get the hands all shaking, and they get all this stuff, and then they come over, and then they say, oh yeah, do you believe that you can be healed? Do you believe it? And then everybody's hooping and hollering and throwing Bibles and banging their heads on stuff and running around, flopping on the floor like a fish out of water, and they're doing all this stuff, and all this hyper emotion. They got the music playing, and everybody's hyper emotional. And then have you ever seen somebody who has two broken legs just get up and start walking out of a Pentecostal tent? No. And if you ever do, they've always been caught as being plants, as being somebody who was pretending, lying to be a crippled person, and they got in that chair, and then they got up, and that was to trick. They've always been caught, every single time. Because why? There's no more miracles today. You can't just faith heal somebody right there on the spot. You can't do it. Now, Samuel is telling, so we can finish up here before the clock gets us. Samuel is telling, Samuel right here is actually here not because of this woman having some kind of power. No, God is choosing to teach this woman a lesson because she's been saying, hey, I can conjure up dead people. And she's been lying. But now God actually does give her a vision, and it terrifies her, right? You think she's ever going to go around telling people she can do that anymore?
Yes.
She might go around telling people, hey, I actually did see a real vision from God, and it was terrifying. She might, but it also could be the case that she might go down the road and never speak of this again because it might, it's so
terrifying.
Traumatized, yeah. It could be either one. Now, but the thing is, God is teaching her a lesson. Hey, you've been lying all these years to people. I'm going to show you the real thing. he's also taking this opportunity to teach who else a lesson? Saul. Because what is Samuel telling Saul? He says, God's not going to help you. You've been praying. You've been waiting on these dreams. You've been waiting on these visions. You've been trying to talk to these prophets, and you've got nothing. So now you're resorting to this sin that you know is a sin, that I told you was a sin while I was still alive, and you're doing all this. I'm here to tell you, God's not going to help you. You can wait and pray all you want. God's not going to help you because you are His enemy. He is your enemy because you're in sin. Now, yeah. And now look at verse 17. Verse 17 was a reminder to him of what Samuel earlier had prophesied, based on Samuel's disobedience to God in 1 Samuel 15:28. The original prophecy was that the kingdom would be given to a neighbor. So the kingdom of Israel would be given to a neighbor. Who is their bordering state? Who is the country that is bordering right next to Israel that they're always battling with?
Philistines?
Yeah. So the prophecy was, you're going to disobey God because you have proven yourself to be disobedient already. There's going to be a time where you refuse to learn from your lessons, and it's going to be so bad that this whole kingdom is going to be given over to one of its neighbors. Okay? Now, this is the first recorded instance where Saul was specifically told that the neighbor was David. Now, look here. 2 reasons are given in verse 18 for the. Now, why does it say? Why did I say Philistia and then the text says David? Because where's David?
David's in Philistine right now.
Right now, right? What city does he own that Achish gave it to him? Starts with a Z. Ziklag. All right, which is in Philistia. All right, 2 reasons are given in verse 18 for the kingdom being given to another. The first is Saul's disobedience to God. That's a pretty good reason for him losing it, right? That's the only. If that was the only reason, would that be enough?
That would be enough.
That would be enough. Now, what's the second reason? In verse 18 of chapter 28, it says his failure to what?
Obey.
To destroy Amalek, right? And
executed his fierce wrath upon Amalek.
Okay. Now, who was the one that had to kill Amalek, the former king here of?
Samuel had to, didn't he?
Samuel had to. He had to take the sword and cut him into pieces. Do you think Samuel enjoyed that?
No.
That's the first time I've ever heard of Samuel killing somebody. He may have before, but Samuel had to do. He had to do what the Lord wanted because Saul refused to kill that man Amalek because he thought if he kept him alive, he could use him as a puppet ruler and get the people to like him, so he wouldn't have to kill all the people. Now, the first has to do with Saul's failure to wait for Samuel to make the offering. You guys remember that that's where he disobeyed God. The disobedient acts of Saul after that time simply confirmed the wisdom of God's decision. God's decision to do what? Depart from Saul and find a new king, right? That's what. Was that a good move on God's part?
Yes.
Yeah. Because if he had given Saul another chance, after he'd already been giving him several, if he had just stayed with Saul and been pleased, that would have told everyone else God still thinks Saul is pleasing in His sight, even though Saul continues to do these evil, wicked things. God's not the author of confusion, so He's not going to sit in someone's. He's not going to show His approval of a person who is doing all these horrible things. Keep in mind, He's shown His approval on David. Now he departed Saul, and now He's been showing approval on David. But has David been perfect?
No.
No. It's not about being perfect, is it? It's about striving to do the best you can.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in recent events, we see that David's been lying, and that's going to come back. But he's still not to the point. It's still a sin, but it doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the same heavy consequences as heavy of consequences yet that Saul and his bad things has. Saul is going to be dealt with, and Saul and his sins are going to be dealt with soon. David and his sins will be dealt with later on. One thing at a time here. Look at verse 19. It shows that showed Saul what was going to happen. Remember that God would not give him guidance, but did show him events that would follow. Two basic things were going to happen. Both Israel and Saul would fall into the hands of who?
Philistines.
This simply signified that Israel would be defeated by
Philistines.
In battle. Further, Saul was told that he and his sons would all die. Who is one of Saul's sons that we know very well?
Jonathan.
Mm-hmm. Does it say here that all of your sons except for Jonathan are going to die? It says what?
Thou and thy sons.
Okay, Frank, you brought this up before. If Saul dies, who gets the kingdom?
It hadn't been promised to David, it's Jonathan.
Right. Or one of his other sons, right? It'd be a son of Saul. We see here, God is saying, what? You and your line, your heritage are going to be, your sons are going to be zipped out of existence, right? Your sons are going to die. You and your sons are going to die. The language Samuel used might be confusing to some when he said, tomorrow shalt thou and thy sons be with me. But again, who's speaking here?
Saul.
Samuel.
Samuel.
So Samuel is the one saying this, and he's saying, tomorrow you and your boys are going to be with me. Samuel's saying this, but where is Samuel?
He's dead. He's in the other realm.
He's dead. So if somebody comes back from the dead and speaks to you and says, hey, tomorrow you're going to be with me, do you think that means that he's going to be in another part of the earth, still dead, but just talking to someone, still walking around? No. Because Samuel is not actually there physically, is he?
No.
He's speaking through this woman, right? Because God is allowing this to happen. Now, it is known that Samuel was righteous and Saul was not. How then could Samuel and Saul be with each other after death? The answer, of course, is that they would both be in the world of the dead. Samuel was, of course, in paradise, and Saul would be in what's known as Tartarus. And his sons would each be in whichever place was deserved, where they were supposed to go, right? If Saul had some righteous sons, where would they be?
They'd be in paradise.
With Samuel. If Saul had some wicked sons, they would be
In Tartarus for him.
right. And
Tartarus.
you guys remember Luke chapter 16? You guys remember Luke 16? Well, let me phrase it this way. Luke chapter 16 talks a lot about the rich man and Lazarus, right? You guys remember that? You guys remember how the rich man lived it up while he was on earth, right? And then what happened 1 second after he died? Where's he at? Tartarus. He didn't even think about giving Lazarus even a crumb. He wouldn't even give Lazarus the beggar a crumb of his food on earth. But then 1 second after they're dead, Lazarus is in paradise, and he's not being punished or tormented, right? But the rich man who lived it up on earth and refused to even give one crumb. Can you last very long on a crumb? Have you ever been really hungry? Like super hungry? And I remember like one time, how big is a marshmallow? Not very big, right? I remember one time, that's literally all we had. All we had. And when I was at college, that's the only thing we had. And I had already used up all my meals that I was allotted that week. We had one marshmallow in the cabinet. All the other guys had, credit cards that their moms and dad put money in. That's all I had for a whole day, the marshmallow. I loved that marshmallow. Think about that. That's like a crumb. This Lazarus on earth was just begging for a crumb, and that would have made him happy. But 1 second after death, the roles are reversed. And how bad was it that the rich man was so thirsty? He was being tormented, and all he wanted was just a little bit of water. Can you imagine being so thirsty right now? The rich man said, just take one little drop. Lazarus, send that poor beggar who I refuse to even give a crumb to. I'll even take that one little drop from his finger. He could put his finger in my mouth just to give me that water, and I'll love it. Please send him over here. And what was the answer given to him?
No.
Nope. Even if we wanted to, we can't. We're separated. You're there, we're here. This is what you get. Sorry, And the rich man shows, he's like, man, I really wish I would have lived my life the way I was supposed to. And what else does he say?
Send him back to his brothers.
He says, somebody please go back and talk to my family. He says, go back and talk to my family on earth and tell them I am not in heaven. Tell them, that's what the rich man is saying in Luke chapter 16, right? He's saying, please, somebody, I know I'm in hell and that I'm going to stay here. He's saying, please, I don't want my family members to go to hell either. Please, somebody go and go back to the realm of the living and tell my brothers and my family not to do what I did. Learn from my mistakes. Be righteous. Don't live like I did. Why? Because he doesn't want what? He doesn't want them to be in torment, right? But what is what is the response that is given to him when
they have Moses and the prophets? They won't hear them.
And Jesus is the one saying this parable, is he not? So, and we even have more than just the Old Testament today, don't we? We have the New Testament. We have even more than what they had. And the Lord himself said they have the Old Testament to teach them what they need to do. Now we even have the New Testament on top of the Old Testament. We have double the material to learn from. And we have the example of Jesus' life. So we have everything we need today to be obedient to God, don't we? And we even have that parable on top of everything to learn and understand. We have a man who has died and is in hell forever saying, please don't make the mistake that I made. I do not want my brothers, my family to be with me when they die. That's love. He loved his family. But there's nothing that he could do. Now take it back to, so we can finish up here, take it back to 1 Samuel chapter 28 where we're at. What is Samuel telling Saul? He's saying, hey, you've been trying to pray to God and and you've been trying to get God to tell you and guide you, and you've been trying to lean upon God, and you're saying you're telling everybody that you want God to lead you and to help you and take control of your life, but he's not going to do that. Samuel, he's speaking from the dead here, and he's telling him, this is what God, you want God to tell you something? Well, here, listen up. You have made God your enemy. And so he's not going to help you. You can pray all you want, wait for all the dreams that you want. You can try to talk to all these prophets, but God's not going to reveal anything to them to tell to you because you're not right in his sight. tomorrow, and what does he say? Like, we keep coming back to this because that's important. He says, pray all you want, but tomorrow, you want to know what God has in store for you? Tomorrow, you and your sons are going to be with me. And remember, Samuel is the one speaking here. And where is Samuel?
He's dead.
He's dead. So if a dead man says, tomorrow you and all your kids are going to be with all your sons, all the candidates for your seed to rule as king, all of the things that you've gloried in your carnal mind, the power, all of that's going to be taken tomorrow, and you're going to be with me. You're going to be dead tomorrow. Can you imagine if somebody said that to you? Hey, you got one day to live. What would you say? If somebody told you today, you and all of your kids, tomorrow, that's it. What would you do today? Huh? Speak up. I can't. Yeah, who was that? Tim McGraw sang a song, "Live Like You Were Dying." Was that Tim McGraw? Good song. That's a good song. But who wrote the lyrics of that song before Tim McGraw was ever born? Just saying. Does it make sense now? So we can finish this up real quick here in 1 Samuel chapter 28. Where was I? On verse 19, right? We know that Samuel's telling them, not only are you going to die, but you're going to die in battle, and what's going to be the result? And he's telling this to the king of Israel, Saul. What's going to be the result? You're going to die, your boys are going to die. What's going to happen to the kingdom?
David's going to get it.
And it's going to fall into the hands of the Philistines. They're mortal enemies. But why is David hanging out with the Philistines? Well,
Running from Saul.
Running from Saul. Saul ran him off again. You get what you get, right? You get what's coming to you no matter what, right? I mean, the Hindus would call this karma. But you don't have to believe in karma to understand why is Saul being punished this bad? Because he's done all this himself. If I plant a corn seed in the ground, I'm going to get watermelon in 3 months, right? Right? You mean to tell me if I put a cucumber seed in the ground and I wait until November and I want to eat pumpkin pie, you mean to tell me I can't go to where I planted those cucumbers and get pumpkin pie? Pumpkins to make pumpkin? You mean you trying to tell me that right now? If I plant a cucumber seed, what am I going to get? And that's, depending on, how well the seed grows and all that stuff, right? If I get any plant at all, it's going to be a cucumber. Saul has consistently planted what kinds of seeds? Bad seeds. So he's done bad things to other people. So what kind of fruit is he going to get? Exactly. Is this God being unfair? Is God being vengeful? I mean, he's like, dude, I'm paraphrasing. He's like, Saul, I gave you everything. I warned you countless times. I picked you up out of the mud countless times. When you directly disobeyed me, and I sent Samuel there to help, literally, you were on the ground. And I tried to help, and Samuel tried to help lift you up. You swatted his hand away. Saul, you got no excuse. You thought that you could have been the greatest king ever. You were the first king, and you could have been the greatest king. People would have spoken of your name and your lineage forever. But you've ruined it all. And so he's telling them right now, everything Saul has gloried in. Oh yeah, I got to do this. Okay. So we all understand. So before we finish right here. Okay, Saul, David. Both boys from what town? Huh? Little B.
Little bitty tiny town.
Yeah, the smallest town of all the tribes of Judah. They're both from. What were they before they became soldiers and before they became kings? They were both shepherds, both humble, both good old boys. Saul becomes king. He becomes rich. He becomes powerful. Powerful. He gets a big family. He gets a lot of land. He gets a lot of respect. And he was pleasing in the sight of the Lord. You guys see all that there? Okay. That's a well-blessed man, is it not? Let's just say he dies today. Did he have a good life?
In his own way.
Now, what about little David over here? I mean, this guy's just a kid. And what happens? Saul, who is the king, who had an army, went up against the Philistines, and what happened? Oh man, they got a really big guy. Oh, Goliath. None of my boys are, I'm being Saul right now. None of my boys are fighting. What are we going to do? I mean, you could have done it. If you were pleasing in the sight of the Lord, you could have went out there and killed him. Didn't do it. So what had to happen?
David.
I'll just put Goliath under here. He can check that off his list because David goes over there and he's like, hey man, y'all quit being chickens. If y'all say that you're the Lord's people, y'all go do what the Lord said to go do. The Lord said go kill this army, kill all the people in this land. He said to do this hundreds of years ago and y'all still ain't done it. He says, this guy's over here making fun of our God. I'm going to go kill him. Imagine a 7-year-old saying that, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and then saying, I'm going to go kill that big dude. This whole army is afraid of messing with him. I'm going to go kill him. I'm going to go cut off his head and feed him to, I'm going to go, it's a little graphic, I'm sorry, but that's what it says. Is I'm going to go kill him, and I'm just going to leave him there so the beasts of the field and the birds of the air can come and pick at him. That's the confidence of a young godly boy, David. So he gets that. Now, Saul loses his kingship, right? That's going to go later on to David. Saul loses a lot of his riches. Where does it go?
David.
He loses his... I'll leave power for a second. He loses his family members. Saul's son, Jonathan, is whose best friend?
David.
I'll put Jay. What about his daughter Michael?
Jesus' wife.
So he loses his family. He loses his status as being. He loses a lot of land because he starts losing battles. He loses his status of being pleasing in the sight of the Lord, and so the Spirit of the Lord departs from Saul and goes to who?
David.
And so now he loses the respect of Samuel, who is the high priest of the whole country. He loses the respect of his soldiers. He loses the respect of his family. He loses the respect of everyone he meets because he's not a respectful person or a respectable person. But who becomes the most widely renowned? You guys remember the verse where it says, well, Saul has killed thousands of people. That's great. But David, David's killed tens of thousands of people. All of it.
You just marked out.
Huh?
What's that word you just marked out?
All right, I've got king, rich, power, family, land, respect, and Lord. Okay, so he's lost all this stuff. Now he's losing his power. We see this, right? And he's not going to be king anymore. Now it's going to be, You see this? When we break it down like that, nice. This is what we've led up to throughout this several month study of this book. Is God being fair?
Yes.
Everybody. Even if this is the first time being in here, is God being fair?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, now he's about to lose it all, and let's see. They would both be, they're going to be dead the next day. We talked about the rich man and Lazarus warning. One of the things we need to consider here is that the consequences of our actions, not only upon ourselves, but upon our family and friends as well. Saul has been wicked. Saul has been wicked, and who else is going to die the next day because of that?
His son?
His sons. It said there's one son. It says SONS. The rest of his family members are going to be wiped out because they're going to go to a battle that they shouldn't have even been in. Let's see. Looking at the last few verses here, I forgot. Oh, that's where it was. We'll have to cover the last few verses of this text next time. Yeah, we'll read through 25 next time. But like we see a lot has happened in this chapter so far, and we haven't even finished it yet. He likes to bounce. He likes to bounce. So, but that's my cue. But does anybody have any like observations or any like anything that we've seen in here? I know a lot of people came in, at the tail end of it, but do we see now Saul is the perfect example for us to learn from what not to do, right? We have everything we need in order to be pleasing in the sight of the Lord. Even if we've heard it 1,000 times, it's never too late to obey the word of the Lord, right? If Saul knows, he knows, and is being reminded here one more time, how close is he to death? A day away. Do you think God is giving him one more chance? He's giving him another chance to say, hey, you're so unpleasing in my sight, I'm going to kill you tomorrow. Get yourself right. Do you think that Saul should take this opportunity and make himself right?
Absolutely.
What about today? Are we Saul or are we David? And I'll leave us with that while we take a quick few-minute break. So, all right.